Hello humanity, my name is Ukulele, and today I wanted to talk about some history. As they say, history is told by the victor. What does that really mean though? To me what it means is that, part of what it means is that propaganda, which was used in order to bring down the victor's enemy, may still linger. And that's exactly the case in the life of Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France. I can't speak too much about her early life because I don't know tons about it, but I know a lot about what led to the French Revolution, or excuses that were given anyway. From the beginning of Marie Antoinette marrying into the royal family and moving to France, there were a lot of mixed feelings about her. Because she was from Austria, so obviously people had hard feelings for her being considered a foreigner, an outsider. Although this was very common at the time for people to marry other royals, they would keep it within their family lines, marrying cousins. From the moment that Marie Antoinette showed up in Paris, people were scrutinizing her constantly, which wasn't something that she was used to, I'm sure, except for her mother. Her mother was a very strict woman. There were just many different cultural differences that led to the downfall of the royal family and of Marie Antoinette herself. There are three main key points that people bring up when it comes to the slander surrounding Marie Antoinette. The one I want to start with, it may not be that well known, but it is absolutely crucial in understanding kind of the environment of the time. Marie Antoinette, of course, being the queen consort, was expected to carry herself in a formal, noble manner. However, she was a fairly humble woman. So when she was originally approached about a necklace that was made of diamonds, it was this very luxurious, expensive necklace that this jeweler had made, having 650 diamonds. When they first approached her, she said no. She didn't want anything to do with it, even though they dropped the price. It was super expensive. She was a very humble woman. She didn't want to prance around wearing all this expensive jewelry. Specifically this one especially. Likely she would have known that the previous two kings, or it might have been King Louis XIV, I could be mistaken. I'm not a historian, so keep in mind you can take all of this for a grain of salt. This is just the layman's version of what happened. I think it was King Louis XIV. He lived very exorbitantly, spending way beyond what he should have, decking the palace walls with gold and wasting a ton of the country's funds. Even since then, I think, the population of France was already kind of sick of the royal family. King Louis XVI wasn't all that involved directly with Marie Antoinette from what I've heard and read myself, but she made an effort as the queen consort to not live lavishly, to try to live a more simple life and dress as simply as a queen would dress. It's like the current pope, how he doesn't go out in jewels and all this fancy clothes like all of his predecessors have. He's making an effort to actually be humble. So the necklace comes back into play because there was a man named Cardinal Rohan. He fell out of favor with the queen because he was sleeping around, and Marie Antoinette's mother gave her advice that she should exclude the cardinal from her inner circle, which she of course did, because she was trying to do anything that she possibly could to maintain her public appearance, desperately trying to be viewed in a positive light by her people. The cardinal was told by another woman who claimed that she was associated with Marie Antoinette, which was not the case. assured the cardinal that if he bought her that necklace and presented it to her, that the queen would forgive him and allow him back into her personal circle. But, of course, when he went to try to talk to the queen privately, he assumed that he was speaking to her, but I guess it was night or something and he didn't properly check that it was her. And so the individual who actually was speaking to him was an accomplice of this other woman who convinced him to buy the necklace in the first place. And so he believed that Marie Antoinette had agreed to buy the necklace, despite her trying to tear down all the lavish things in the palace in the first place. So, of course, when he bought the necklace, he gave it to that woman, Madame de la Mothe. Of course, he gave the necklace to her so that she would bestow it to the queen. But naturally, her and the woman that he spoke to in the garden took off with the necklace and completely disappeared. And so the cardinal spoke to the queen, believing that she had received the necklace, and the jeweler demanded the money because they were going to pay in payments. And so, of course, the jeweler was outraged, believing he was being swindled. Marie Antoinette had no knowledge of it and denied it, the whole thing. The cardinal ended up being arrested in the Hall of Mirrors, so the cardinal was declared innocent, and Madame de la Mothe and her accomplices were found, arrested, and judged. And she was branded with a hot iron, with the letter V for voleuse, which is thief. And even though the queen had no knowledge of any of this, was completely innocent, the anti-royalists, I suppose you would call them, used this opportunity to tear her reputation down more. Not that her reputation was good in the first place, because they were constantly against her from the moment she came there, but because of this, her reputation was damaged and unable to be repaired. She herself became a scandal. That's the first thing that led to her downfall. A key point to mention about the diamond necklace is that it wasn't commissioned by anyone. The way that those individuals spun it, though, was that Marie Antoinette, like her predecessors, was an arrogant and spoiled woman, basically, who didn't care about the people and would rather use the money of the country to buy jewelry than to support the people in their time of need with the food and basic necessities. The jewelers just made it with the intentions of it being sold to the royal family, since royals were expected to live exorbitant lives. I think it was originally made for a concubine of a previous king. The second thing that led to Marie Antoinette's downfall was a painting that she had commissioned. I don't remember who it was commissioned by, but essentially it was a painting of her in a dress which was popular at the time back in Austria. So of course, being from Austria, she would want to keep up with some of their traditions. As far as it seems, she didn't care for the flashy way that people in France carried themselves around anyway. The dress that she wore in the painting, the dress resembled a French chemise, which was essentially what French women, and, well, probably most women at the time, wore as their underwear. It was like a white gown. But in Austria, the muslin dress was very popular at the time. A lot of the Austrian nobility would dress in these dresses, which was a simpler fashion, but still seen in Austria as very beautiful. But of course, it was spun that the Queen, Marie Antoinette, was a scandalous, vulgar, provocative woman because she was posing in her underwear, supposedly. So, of course, like with before, they were using anything and everything that they could in order to tarnish her reputation. The third and final thing that led to her downfall was specifically the phrase that she's often quoted for having said, which was, "Let them eat cake," when people were complaining that they had no food to eat, not even bread. It was a staple food, and still is a staple food in France. That was her response to them asking what they should do about not having food. Obviously that's absurd, because if they don't have the means to make bread, they wouldn't have the means to make cake in the first place, since sugar was expensive and common people wouldn't have it, most likely. However, something that people don't seem to acknowledge is that Marie Antoinette was raised her entire life as a noble woman, naturally, based on her demeanor, how humble and passive of a person she seemed to be, even going out of her way to adopt children along with having her own, and making them her world. It stands to reason, to me at least, that such a woman, who goes out of her way to try to set herself apart by getting rid of all of the ornate things in the palace, not trying to live this lavish life that the royals before her had done, because she knew her people were starving, and she knew that obviously they needed the queen and the king's guidance in order to make a difference and to improve their society. But the sad truth about Marie Antoinette's life is that everything that she did was essentially too little too late, and it had nothing to do with her, but the political climate and the previous kings and queens. To me, it doesn't stand to reason that a woman with that sort of upbringing, a mother so strict that Marie Antoinette herself wrote on a letter that she was scared of her and like disappointing her in things, and already having so many problems with society, I personally think it's impossible for her to have said that. When you really get into the details of Marie Antoinette's life, to me, what comes across is a young woman who was one of the youngest children in her large royal family, who was generally unliked and unwanted by her mother, had a very strict upbringing, even if she was generally happy. It just doesn't follow that someone like that would be so foolish, especially with her reactions to the previous two situations. The reason that people believe that she said, "Let them eat cake," is because of the anti-royalists who were against her from day one. They were the ones spreading these lies, saying that she said, "Let them eat cake," propagandizing and making her out to be the villain. Because, of course, in any royal situation, everyone has their own biases and their own agendas. And for someone who wants to take power, of course, you would have to slander the royal family. It's only in their best interest to do so. And they did so very well and very effectively. To me, Marie Antoinette was a gentle soul who was filled with compassion, but forced into a situation where she had little to no power. Everyone was against her from the beginning, before she even had a chance to prove herself. And just constant, regular slander and misfortune ultimately led her to become the scapegoat for a nation. Well, not just the nation, but specifically for those who were seeking power. And there are other things that stood out in her life that they tried to use against her as well. Like the fact that she didn't have any kids for the first 7 years that her and King Louis XVI were married. Although that was because he was such an impassive, apathetic husband. He genuinely didn't care about her. She was just a political pawn, stuck in the middle of everything. Never mind the fact that she was a kid herself when she married at the age of 14, and he being 15. But to me, the thing that stands out the most as a proof of her character is her final words. Her final words, she was speaking to, I believe, the executioner. And as she was walking up to the guillotine, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. And she said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." She didn't contest for her life. She didn't say anything cruel. Even in that moment, not only was she an elegant, upstanding woman, but she was humble and she was kind, even to those who were against her. So to me, Marie Antoinette was a victim of society. A woman who had a compassionate and kind heart and was thrown into the worst situation she could have been in. But the fact that people still believe that she said let them eat cake just shows the power that the victors have in order to shape and direct the narrative of what really happened. If you look at the facts, I believe, you can know the truth. But sometimes the truth that the victors tell is wrong, and we have to acknowledge that. And even though Marie Antoinette died in the 1700s on October 16th, 1793, I hope that sometime in the future her name will actually be restored. That her image will be restored. That people will stop thinking of her as this insensitive woman who was out partying and just living a lavish life, ignoring her people's needs all the time. Because if you look at the actual facts, there's no way that that's the case. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys found this interesting. It is something that I'm very passionate about. She's one of the people that I really admire in history, despite basically the unfortunate circumstances that her life fell into. I really respect her as a person, even though she lived so long ago. She did what she could with the world that she was put in, and being a woman and having so little power over her own body and her own life. I've thought about making more videos like these in the future. Let me know if you would be interested in that. A couple of the other people that I've thought about talking about are Joan of Arc, Cleopatra, Alan Turing, Amelia Earhart. Some of those people. And people like them, probably. If you guys had any recommendations, I'd be willing to look into those a bit. But let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Also, I do have a second channel now. It's Phantom Yuka. I have it linked in my YouTube channel, so that's where I'm going to be posting all of my creepier content from now on. So any of the ghost cards or the creepy games or whatever. Not that I will be playing those very often, so don't expect too frequent of updates on there. I'm thinking maybe like once a month, where I do this, my main, like once a week. But yeah, I guess that's everything. Let me know in the comments if there was anything significant that I left out, or any of your thoughts over all of this. And thanks for watching. I will see you all again soon.